everybody, welcome back to the Contrarians. Today we are doing another Patreon suggested topic. Now, in the world of rock commentary, we always used to talk about the sophomore slump, how a band would put out a great album and the next album wasn't as great. And you would hear the band say things like, well, you have your whole life to write the first album and 30 days to write the second album, or whatever time frame you want to give it. But today we are taking that idea to its ridiculous extreme and going over bands that never exceeded their debut album. So I look forward to hearing some contrarian opinions on this. And we are going to start off with our most recent contrarian convert, Eric, the Danish Viking. Eric, kick things off for us, please.
Nice. Thanks for having me. Put some thought into this one. And I think there may be some pushback. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. That was followed up by Lies. A couple years later, it was followed up by Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. And then after that, it was just, Lost in the Wilderness, as far as I'm concerned. Appetite for Destruction was such a high, I think 30 million albums and going is what it sold. Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 are the closest things that, and I think, there's a lot of songs. I think, what is there, 20 songs or, 15 to 20 songs on each one of those, albums. It's a double album in sort of a way. You've got two separate albums, so you could buy them individually. Great business idea. Together, they combine to be a double album. Each one, I think, sold about 7 million. But I think, the material, a lot of the material on Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, there were a few covers. There were a few songs from way back in the day before they had signed to Geffen. A lot of the material is, I think, when bands would put an album together, they would demo 20 songs, 20, 30 songs. The producer would come in, they would sort of, work up the best ones that group together. I think with Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, I think maybe Axl, just as a way of, maybe he thought there's sure, I want to give credit to a couple. So Civil War, You Could Be Mine. There's some great songs on that, Coma. But I think as a collective group of songs, I think I love the albums. I still listen to them. I think, comparing that to Appetite for Destruction, I think it was, a ways off from that standard, that bar that they hit. And, while I think those albums were really good, I don't think they got, as they say, within spitting distance of what they initially came up with. And so, I thought about it. Lies was cool. The Spaghetti Incident, I might have listened to it a couple times. Chinese Democracy, listened to it a few times. But nothing touches Appetite for Destruction. You got 3 huge hits. You got Welcome to the Jungle, Paradise City, Sweet Child of Mine. Massive hits. If you took those off, it's still a solid album. Mr. Brownstone, It's So Easy, Night Train. That's my first one. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction.
Okay. Go ahead and give us your whole list. No, up to 5.
Up to 5. Okay. Now, let's go with Pearl Jam's 10. Pearl Jam was never one of my favorite bands. I loved the album. I'm from sort of the Northwest area, from Spokane. Spent some time in LA. And so back in the, when I was 12, 13 years old, I think when 10 came out, I sort of heard about it through some friends. At that time, the band, I think that's 1991, you still had like Motley Crue, Skid Row, Van Halen were sort of the big bands. Grunge was around. It hadn't really caved in the entire music industry like it would, 6 months, a year later. But when 10 came out, I thought, man, this is such a good band. I knew a little bit about Mother Love Bone. I heard, Alice in Chains. I knew that they had some of the remnants of the Mother Love Bone guys on tour with them. But then when 10 came out, I thought, man, this is a great album. Turns out, a lot of those songs were, previous Jeff Ament, Stone Gossard, Mother Love Bone type material. Eddie Vedder came in. They sort of combined forces. I thought that was a killer album. And I never thought after that they got anywhere near what they did on 10. I think Eddie Vedder's sensibilities sort of took over and dominated their career to their demise. I'm sure, I mean, they have a few good songs, but I think 10 was by far the best one. So my YouTube channel is the Danish Viking. I've got a Danish flag. My family's from Denmark, so I have to throw in Merciful Fate's Melissa as my third album. I think Merciful Fate has great material. I love, King Diamond. I love, Hank Sherman, Michael Denner, the whole, but that list of songs that they had on that first album, Evil, Curse of the Pharaoh, Into the Coven, just song after song, top to bottom, all killer, no filler, as they say. So yeah, so my third album would be Merciful Fate. Going back to one of the first band that I fell in love with. I'm a musician, I'm a guitar player. The first thing I heard, was Van Halen and Rat. And Warren DeMartini's guitar sound, Robin Crosby, Stephen's voice. That's what pushed me into, being a guitar player. Out of the Cellar is going to be my number 4 album. I think they had awesome. I think every Rat album, up until I think Reach for the Sky, and then they kind of fell off with Detonator. But I still, that string of albums was so awesome, especially for guitar players. But I think every album just got a little bit. The songwriting just got a little bit. I think the sound got better, the production got better. Warren's lead, his solos, they evolved every album. He got, I think he was 17 or 18 or, pretty young guy when they first got started. And as he really matured into this monster guitar player with, jazz chops, so the guitar playing, I think, got better. The sound of the band got better, but I think the songwriting got worse. And therefore, I think they never really hit what they did with Out of the Cellar. So Out of the Cellar is going to be my 4th one. And then, I think for my 5th album, I guess, what do we consider an EP? Do we consider an EP an album? I guess I kind of did that with Rat. I mean, their first EP, technically isn't an album, it's an EP. So if you guys are going to cut me some slack on the EP thing, I would say, yeah, I would probably, you know what? I'm going to change gears. I'm going to go with a band that I think didn't get a lot of credit at the time. I'm going to say Winger, their self-titled album. Kip sang about 17-year-old girls and posed in some weird magazines and stuff. But the musicianship that they put out, that they demonstrated on that first debut album, Rod Morgenstein, Reb Beach, Paul Taylor, the songwriting, I don't think, with the complexity to the chord changes they put out, I don't think, I think they really hit a high point as far as what hard rock music in the 80s, as far as the quality of the songwriting and the musicianship. I think they really hit almost like they almost were like a Dream Theater type of a skill set with those guys. So, and I don't think they followed up to that, but I just wanted to kind of shout out to them. And yeah, those are the 5 albums I was thinking about.
Nice.
So
okay,
there you go.
I wanted to mention Spokane. That was the place. I'm from Trail, BC, right? So all my shopping as a kid was eucalyptus, magic mushroom, strawberry jams, right? All those great stores at the time. Were you going to go to Queensryche with that EP situation, or?
Ooh, yeah, that would have been, what would have been the next one then? Rage for Order?
Warning.
Oh, there would have been
the Warning first as a full.
Yeah, I think their high water mark was Operation Mindcrime, and by that, there are a few albums in. But
what was your EP example going to be?
Well, I mean, I guess when I say EP, I guess in my mind I was also thinking like non-major label albums. Yeah. So with that, I would have included, Motley Crue's Leather Records being a non-major label. I just want to, keep in the spirit of what the theme of the show is, and If I threw out Too Fast for Love and said Shout at the Devil was sort of their high water mark, you know, maybe that's kind of breaking the rules a little bit, but that's kind of the direction I was thinking.
Yeah, nice. Well, yeah, I had Merciful Fate as my honorable mention and Rat as my honorable mention as well. So,
yeah. Eric, we are the Contrarians. The only rules we have are self-imposed rules, buddy.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're about inspiration, not restrictions.
Well,
Man can't hang that on me.
I'm glad I got Winger in there. They don't get enough credit as far as the musicianship that they have. Great players.
Well, they were asking for some of that, but I actually agree with you.
That's true. That is true. Yeah.
All right, Andy, let's go to you next. What have you got for bands that never exceeded their debut album?
All right. Well, I've got some choices that I could certainly be argued that they did produce equal work later on, but most people consider the first album for, you know, novelty purposes or the sense of shock or surprise is the one that makes the biggest impact. So Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
So this band has 4 albums, the 4th of which is all covers, which is great, by the way. It's maybe my favorite album by them. But I think everyone agrees this first one's the best. But it's funny, like if you compare the debut to Evil Empire or the Battle of Los Angeles, they're really consistent. And a good thought experiment is, if Evil Empire had been, for instance, the first album in 1993, would it have launched them into the stratosphere the way the debut did? And I think it could have, absolutely, because they kind of give you the whole, you know, potent Rage Against the Machine presentation on everything they do. There's not really a dip in quality across the albums. I don't hear it. They also don't really stray from the formula that they give you on this first album. So there's just a real consistency. Even when they teamed up with Chris Cornell, I had high hopes for that. And it just sounded like, you know, exactly what you thought it was going to sound like. There was no real like marriage of the two parties. It just sounded like Chris Cornell stapled on top of Rage Against the Machine riffs. So when you think about like when the timing of when this album came out, 1993, it's sort of grunge and people love their angsty, heavy music, but grunge is kind of depressive and it's kind of heroin music. And Rage Against the Machine is really angry music, but it's got more of this proactive, like radical political vigilance and this like sober athleticism instead of like nodding out off stage, 5 minutes before showtime kind of vibe. So, and because there's a hip hop and funk element to it, it's got a bounce and that makes it really fun. So anyway, I just think they're an absolutely amazing band. I think the shock of this band is that there was absolutely nobody really doing what they did. You could point out a couple of little outliers along the way. You could say, oh yeah, well, Public Enemy teamed up with Anthrax and stuff like that. But those were sort of aberrations or anomalies. So anyway, Rage Against the Machine. Let's see, what else I want to talk about. So most Contrarian viewers will probably want to skip ahead for this one. This is Daft Punk. The debut album Homework is one of my absolute all-time favorite albums. And I don't think that most fans agree with me that it's the best one, but for me, none of their other albums even come close to being an all-time favorite. The first album, it comes out in 1997. They're a pair of French electronic music composer, producer, DJ types, and they create this fun, kind of playful, bubbly, futuristic funk and house music and disco, and it sounds really fun and playful at times, and at other times it's really bracing and hard and noisy. And the album's called Homework, and they did make this at home, and it was a real cheap and cheerful DIY affair, so it has like a kind of punky aspect to it. The next album they made after that was called Discovery, And I think most people look at this as their magnum opus, but for me, it's sort of, it kind of waters down that crude potency of the debut, and they kind of spread out into different areas. They bring in guest singers. They do more like traditional pop singles, and it's more eclectic and everything. But I just love hearing just the brashness of the debut. So, and that's always going to just have a place in my heart. Another one, REM Murmur. So here's one where they do have an EP that precedes this. So I'm going to discount the EP, and I'm just going to talk about Murmur. Now, this is another one where you could do a thought experiment, and you could interchange Document or Reckoning or Fables of the Reconstruction with this, and imagine it also making just as much of an impact in the music world. So what I'm saying is that whole stretch in the 80s when they're on IRS Records is an amazingly consistent, super stylized, kind of one-of-a-kind voice that they come up with. But the debut just has a special, it's a different presentation of the band. It's produced by Mitch Easter, and I think that he achieves an almost Martin Hannett type of production style, where it sounds kind of chilly and detached in a way, and the songs all have this kind of otherworldly, immortal, eternal feeling, like they were always there. It doesn't sound like it's from a particular time period. They're very serious on this first album too. Later on, they get louder, they get looser, they get sort of more, there's humor comes in. But in this first album, they're very serious young men. And so there's kind of a somberness almost to this album. And that weird frosty production thing really just kind of makes these songs seem like these fragile little origami pieces. Even the upbeat stuff kind of does sound a little bit kind of, I don't know, strangely kind of otherworldly and detached in a strange way. So I was mainly going to talk about those three, but I have a few others I'll throw out there. The Pretenders. The first two albums are pretty close, but this one definitely wins by a hair. It's got that more of a band spirit. After, the guitarist dies after those first two albums, the album sort of becomes Chrissie Hynde and Employees. So it kind of starts sounding that way, a little less like a band. Hot Hot Heat. I don't think any of you know this band. Probably, maybe you do, Martin. No. Their debut album, Make Up the Breakdown, from 2002 or 3, is one of my all-time favorite albums. It's just a genius, wiry, post-punky, XTC-ish power pop record that's flawless from start to finish. And then they just completely lost their mojo. Whatever magic they had on this album, it just went out the window for the next album and the next album and the next album. How many is that?
That's 5.
That's 5.
Okay, that's
cool.
it.
Nice. Love your Pretenders choice. That's a great one. I love those first two albums, and then it drops off for me after that. So yeah. Nice one.
Still a lot of good songs after that, but it just doesn't have that. It doesn't have that like that visceral band feeling, that kind of like us against the world kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very, very tight and frantic and just beautifully, strangely recorded. Those first two albums are very obscure. It's hard to believe they were as successful as they were with that sound.
Yeah.
Okay. Good variety so far. I always hope that people come away with from these videos with a list of albums that they feel like they need to run and check out.
Yeah.
Bill, let's go to you. What have you got for bands that never exceeded their debut?
Okay, Reed. Let's see here. All right, the one that there's a lot of potential candidates here, but the particular band that inspired this topic for me was Art. Rainbow Danny. I'm on record on this channel as saying how much I love the 21st Century Heart albums. Even their supposed sellout years through the mid to late 80s and into the 90s, there's even some good stuff on those. I don't think they ever truly made a bad album. But this original band, again, like Andy was talking about with the Pretenders, you go back to the original thing, it's a band, and it later becomes the Wilson sisters and whoever they chose to hire. Similar situation there, to the point that now when people think of Heart, these are the only two people they generally think of. But pretty much everything the band was ever going to do, it's all done here, and it's all done, I think, better than most everything else they ever did. There are a few moments along the way that can match this, but really this is just pretty much a flawless debut. I wasn't going to throw this one out here, but since Andy brought up REM, this is a band that Michael Stipe suggested the name for on the IRS label, Concrete Blonde.
Good. I'm glad you weren't going to REO.
No, no. You know what? I had an REO shirt on earlier today, but I took it off. So I got one you might approve of a little more.
All right. I'm doing Voivod today.
Yeah, Concrete Blonde. They're pretty much essentially a one at best 2-hit wonder, but the hits came off their third album. At this point, when this came out in '86, they were unknown. Nobodies. I just happened across them accidentally. And this is with their original 3-person lineup with their original drummer, Harry Rushikoff, who was quite a bit different than Paul Thompson, the former Roxy Music drummer who took over on Bloodletting, the album, the third album that was their breakthrough. But again, essentially the template for everything that Concrete Blonde would become was already here. Reviews at the time, I remember one in particular that always irritated me because the particular critic complained that Johnette Napolitano didn't know what she wanted to be. She just knew she wanted to be somebody. They were complaining because it was stylistically all over the map. I think that's a good thing. I like that kind of variety in an artist. So that was a positive for me with Concrete Blonde.
Nice.
Let's see. Go a little more modern. Again, these things are, they didn't surpass or exceed the debut, but again, as Andy mentioned, the idea is it doesn't necessarily mean these are the best. It means that they never made one that was better. They may have made some that were equal. And Black Country Communion, I think, fits the bill for that quite well. I think their albums in general are consistently good, but this debut, when it came out in 2010, it was just this off-the-cuff super group, and there was just a freshness and fun to it. You could tell these guys enjoyed playing with each other. They were still new to each other in many ways. Well, maybe not so much Glenn Hughes and Jason Bonham, but yeah. And I don't know. It's after that breakup, after the first 3 albums, they kind of lost a little something, but it was all good here. So Black Country Communion is number 3. This one may be obvious, and many progressive rock fans would disagree with me on this, though. In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson. I know many people would cite Red in particular as possible. I know Martin likes the next version of the band, the Adrian Belew version. But for me, it's all about Ian McDonald. Ian McDonald was the key player on this particular album, and his loss was monumental to the band. It's not to say I don't like the stuff they did after. I think there's a lot of great stuff, but they never quite sounded like this again, including the follow-up, though Fripp did try to make a clone, essentially, with In the Wake of Poseidon. Let's see here. All right, I'm going to go for something that might be a little more fitting of the channel. Night Ranger, Dawn Patrol. This was possibly my favorite band when I was about 14 or 15. This and the follow-up, Midnight Madness, where the cassettes were played incessantly. They were not reinventing the wheel here. There's nothing super original, but this album, it's loaded with hooks, but it hits hard too. It started on Midnight Madness, which I still loved quite a bit, but they were starting to get a little too much into the pop sheen and away from the harder rock that was on the debut. And I think that kind of hurt them, not commercially, obviously, but I just think there was a certain raw heaviness here that they didn't have ongoing here after the original. So yeah, if we have time, I got any number of honorable mentions, but yeah, there's a 5 right off the bat there.
Nice.
Okay, and very few, well, actually, so far, no overlaps. There may be an overlap later, not the spoilers. So, Martin, what have you got for 5 picks?
Okay, so I love the idea of Merciful Fate and Rat, Danish Viking. I mean, I love the idea of the fact of the matter that those catalogs are just really quality throughout, sort of thing. But it is nice that the debuts, a lot of people would call those the best. So I've got some that fit in that category and some that don't. And I think that my first one is one that doesn't. I've got Kickaxe. This is a really interesting, magnetic, full of personality, early hair metal album from Saskatchewan, of all places. 1984. It's produced by Spencer Proffer. It's got this strange push-pull, minimalist, maximalist, almost Pretenders-like sort of production ethic to it. Loads and loads and loads of personality out of the lead vocalist, George Christon. It's got, like I say, it's got this sort of thumping, minimalist, holding back, put the brakes on, tons of personality for a hair metal album. It's a little bit, it feels a little bit like a Helix album as well, of the magical best writing period of Helix. But unfortunately, it was kind of all downhill after this. Welcome to the Club was not as good. Rock the World was not as good. They broke up. Later on, they had a reunion album, but George wasn't there. So this is just lightning in a bottle. Everything just worked. It's just a very fragile, interesting chemistry that you get with this record for a debut. Next is a band that I feel the quality is there all the way throughout. I'm going with Buzzcocks in the debut. This feels a little bit like King Crimson Discipline to me, where the excitement of the concept is captured right away on the first album, of that Adrian Belew period, King Crimson. I feel you've got the excitement of the concept captured on this debut. I remember this is my new release copy. I don't have the silver plastic bag anymore to it, but this is silver ink and it's a beautiful design and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just a heavy rock and punk album. After this, I was a little shocked when Love Bites came out. It was a little bit too poppy, but I've grown to love it over the years, and Singles Going Steady and another kind of Music in the Kitchen, whatever it's called, and the later stuff. Flat Pack Philosophy, I played dozens and dozens of times, if not hundreds of times. I just love that later period record, but this has the most bite. This really is the King Crimson Discipline of the catalog as you move through Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair. That's exactly a good corollary of what this is. It's the exciting early album. Next, I'm going with Savatage. This album blew my mind when it first came out. This was so heavy, so beautifully produced. It's a baby band. It's got, it's not even on a label. Basically, they release it themselves, Par Records. But I remember seeing this in Spokane, Danish Viking, and flipping it over and seeing a song called Twisted Little Sister, and seeing that the instruments are Shrieks of Terror, Metal Axe, Barbaric Cannons in the bottom end. And I figured, this is going to be heavy. I remember getting this home the same day as Savage, Loose, and Lethal and Metallica Ride the Lightning, 3 blue albums, and all of them were incredible. I just thought, even though the next album's great and they've got some other later material, this was absolutely perfect. Another kind of an interesting one. I think Grant might scream about this one. We'll see when he sees this show. But I think Cheap Trick captured lightning in a bottle with this debut. And I think this is the only time they had that magical The Who-like chemistry. And after that, they were tamed down by Tom Werman and became something different. But on this album, they're combative, they're nasty, they're rhythmic. Jack Douglas produces. It's got a very exciting, visceral production quality to it. So you could say, you know, I would say I like a lot of different Cheap Trick albums for different reasons, but I could argue that this is the best one. It is certainly the only one that sounds like this version of the band. This is a one-off. I think the next three are similar. I think the George Martin one's a little different. I really am fond of Next Position Please as well, but this I got as a new release, loved it immediately when it came out. And my fifth one is an interesting choice. You know, I really personally don't think this is my favorite Ted Nugent record, but a lot of people do. And I like the idea that this is Ted Nugent with purpose, everything coming together. There were probably, I would say, 3 different versions of the Amboy Dukes before this. You've got the original Garage version, you've got the Middle Years Psych version, you've got the Discreet Records, 2 records that are kind of a demo version of this. You've got Call of the Wild and Tooth, Fang, and Claw leading up to this. But I think a lot of people figure, you know, this is the best produced one as well. This is produced, it is Tom Werman, but it's not bad Tom Werman. Bad Tom Werman shows up on the next, not the next one. He shows up on Cat Scratch Fever and he's there for Weekend Warriors. But to me, you know, this is a well-produced album with lots of bottom end and stuff. I think there are problems with future albums, and a lot of people say this has the most purposeful songwriting from the band. You know, you've got Stormtroopin' was super heavy on this. I remember as kids thinking that was off the charts, as was Motor City Madhouse. And people think Stranglehold is the greatest song Ted ever did. I certainly don't think so. It's way down my list. But there you go. That's my fifth choice, Ted Nugent.
Okay. And this may be the only channel where you would hear somebody compare the Buzzcocks to King Crimson.
Absolutely.
You heard it right here. Yeah. Okay. Well, I was afraid I was going for really low-hanging fruit. And yet, after all this time, there's only been one overlap in my choices. But I'm going to go to one that I talk about all the time when you come to album drop-offs. One of my absolute favorite albums from the 1970s, and that's going to be Boston's debut. It's even as a child, I was 8 years old when this album came out, and even then I knew what an impact it had. It wasn't just the songwriting or the delivery, it was the technology that was brought to bear on this album that would come to define the entire 1980s, basically, even though this album came out in 1976. And then you get to Don't Look Back, and it's functionally the same album, except not quite as good. And then you get to Third Stage. Now, I went to college, and I was in college in 1986, a little college in Oklahoma. For some reason, there were a ton of Boston fans on this little campus. And when Third Stage came out, people were really...
I heard every word, Reed. I was just grabbing a drink.
Not a problem. And then, so I would walk around, everybody's playing Third Stage, and I was like, you know, this is really just cookie cutter rock to me now. There's no more uniqueness to it. The Tom Schultzness of it has been replaced by kind of like Tom Schultz technology with Journey songs. I don't know. It didn't do it for me. After that, I kind of dipped my toes in and out of the catalog. But for me, this is an unassailable masterpiece. And the rest of them, I mean, I won't ask people to shut them off if they're playing them, but I don't really dig them either. Now, this is an album near and dear to my heart. It may get some pushback. I know this is not Martin's favorite album, but I'm going to say Dio never matched Holy Diver. Now, I have a theory about Dio that I will continue to bring up on these until it becomes accepted wisdom, that Dio was a man who changed very slowly. Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, he's still performing like he's in Elf. When he gets to Black Sabbath with Heaven and Hell, he's still performing like he's in Rainbow. And when he forms the Dio band, this is the most Black Sabbath album that Dio would ever put out with the Dio band. And for me, that was the best thing, because I absolutely love that. You take that Black Sabbath sound and you add, you know, one of the hottest guitarists on the scene at the time in Vivian Campbell, and you end up with a winner. And as much as I like his other albums, I don't think he ever really equaled Holy Diver.
You know, Reed, also, I just want to point out that reminds me a little bit of what I said about King Crimson Discipline and that Buzzcocks album, and even Ted Nugent. It's almost like the first most exciting. We're all excited about this proof of concept idea. And Dio, I had that on my honorable mentions as well, because there's just the most excitement about the first version of it, right?
Right. Although one thing I will say, I actually found this to be a very difficult exercise. Most of the bands that I thought the debut was best had very small catalogs, because if as bands go on, they get over that sophomore slump and then they start picking up, which is what you want from your bands, right? They should grow, they should evolve and get better with time, although some don't. It's a repeat, but this is the one repeat we're going to have today. Appetite for Destruction. I mean, I still remember when this album came out, what it was like Van Halen 1. It was such a bomb on the music scene. And when you consider that it was so different than everything else that was super popular, it's still weird to me that metal fans champion this album. And in fact, saved this album because rock fans weren't buying it. It took them almost a year to figure out who to market this to, and it turned out to be heavy metal fans. And this album is very much kind of Aerosmith. I mean, this is not new, but it's Aerosmith meets AC/DC with a little extra punk edge. And by the time you get to Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, it's really just Aerosmith. It's arena rock. They've become the Aerosmith of the 90s, which is fine because I thought Aerosmith sucked in the 90s. Just throwing that out there.
The funny thing, Reed, people forget about that record is how long it is. I think it's like 53 minutes long or something. It's bizarre.
Oh,
yeah.
I did not look into that, but yeah, it goes by quickly enough. I remember they used to call Slash the anti-guitar hero because he couldn't shred, right? And now, you know, everybody and their dog cites Slash as an influence. And speaking of guitarists that everybody cites as an influence, this one maybe, I don't know. Don't know what people are going to think of this one, but I'm going to say Jimi Hendrix. Yeah. Are You Experienced? This is an album that functionally defines a genre. You know, if people ask what psychedelic music is, I don't put on Cream. I don't put on the Beatles. I put on Are You Experienced? Now, I'm not saying that he didn't get better as a player, but he never put out more innovative music than this. This is the album that if you own one Jimi Hendrix album, this is the one to own. And to me, that makes it, you know, he never surpassed this. Maybe live. I mean, he died when I was 5 years old. I don't exactly remember, but I didn't get to see him live. So all I've got are the records. And I'm actually kind of surprised this one didn't come up earlier, but we got to go with Montreux's debut. Martin has argued fairly eloquently this is the first true American heavy metal album. I tend to agree with that sentiment. It was amazing. And I often say a band is a type of alchemy. When you change the formula, you get a different result. And this album is just full of classic songs very early in the 1970s. And their very next album is such a dramatic drop in quality. It's got one banger song on it, really. And I think it's because they changed the formula. On this album, they don't really know what they've got yet. They've got a brand new singer in Sammy Hagar. They've got some charisma. They've got banger songs like Rock Candy and Space Station No. 5. It was an album that resonated with people. And then what you get on the follow-ups is a whole lot more Ronnie Montrose. And perhaps that just wasn't a good thing. They needed a little less Ronnie in the stew. And I think
that's Reed for the win. I can't think of a better example for this show than that record.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Was that 1972?
74. Oh, no, 73.
73.
Yeah. Okay, that's my 5.
Nice.
So we just one overlap out of the 5 of us. That's pretty awesome. So we still have time left. So we'll go around and give people a chance to make wrap-up comments or honorable mentions, or both. Eric, have any wrap-up comments?
No, you know, I like the Rage Against the Machine selection. I like Jimi Hendrix, Dio. I thought about Dio yesterday. I think Montrose is a great example. That's a great sounding album too. I think the way the it was recorded, the guitars and the drums as early as 73. I mean, I thought they really nailed that sound. I'm surprised nobody overlapped on Winger. Bummer. Yeah, you know, I could have, but yeah, no, I think Rage Against the Machine, that's a great example. I think all you guys' selections, you know, really smart choices. You said something about Slash, you know, he doesn't get the credit as a shredder. You know, Slash is he's in my top 3 guitar players of all time. You know, on that album, you can't take out one note or add another note. That album is perfect as far as the guitar playing. Slash really plays like really perfect melodic lines. He's never trying to impress you with his skill. He does meander a bit, but everything is really serves the song well, and he's a really fluid player. So yeah, and that album, I don't think, you know, I don't even think they knew what they had at the time. So yeah, I'm glad we overlapped on that one. And I learned a lot. Thanks for having me sit in with you guys.
Good job, Eric. Very cool.
Yeah, no problem. Congratulations on completing your first vid with us. Andy, any wrap-up comments or honorable mentions?
I had one other. I had Bauhaus's first album, In the Flat Field. And it's kind of one that I kind of only half-heartedly put up, but it has the element of like this stark new feral kind of dark underbelly sound that people would eventually start calling goth. I like some of their other albums just as well, but I think that the first album just has this kind of I don't know, this nervous kind of tense crackling energy to it, and it's this weird amalgam of glam rock and dub and you know, funk and all these weird, you know, Celtic music and all this weird stuff put together in a strange, unique way. Full disclosure, I played guitar with Peter Murphy for a few years, and we played a lot of this album. The stuff from this album is what the hardcore fans want to hear the most. You know, stuff like Double Dare and The Flat Field, Stigmata Martyr, Dark Entries, that kind of thing. Yeah, I thought of Holy Diver as well. Yeah, I think that's about it for me, though.
Nice.
Okay. Bauhaus, great music to play while you're running around in a graveyard of death.
Exactly.
Bill Schuster, honorable mentions, wrap-up comments?
Yeah, I will say, Reed, that every one of yours that you mentioned, except for Guns N' Roses, was on my potential list and honorable mentions. Definitely Boston in particular. But I got to disagree with you guys on the Guns N' Roses. I know that's a no-brainer for most people, but I do find the Use Your Illusion albums more interesting. So, but I'll just quickly go through without a whole lot of fanfare or anything here. A few oddballs. Ozark Mountain Daredevil's debut, right up the Channel's alley, right? This is very hard rock, heavy metal, eh?
That may be the first mention ever across 1,000 shows.
Actually, we did an episode earlier where I mentioned them. We were talking about how to get people into different genres. So this is the second.
Yeah.
Angel's debut.
God damn it, Bill. I had that on my honorable mentions too.
Zebra.
Yeah, good one. Yeah.
I know you won't have this one, Martin. Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Chicago Transit Authority. Loverboy. Back when they were just a fun, cool, weird, new wave-ish, popish band before they kind of turned into generic lunk-headed metal.
Yeah, good point.
Big Country, The Crossing.
Oh, nice one. Yeah.
The debut from Ambrosia. And then there are two that I deliberately didn't choose, even though they're my favorites from two of my favorite artists. because even though these are my favorites, I do think these artists both continued to evolve and grow throughout their careers. So I can't say that, oh yeah, this is the best and then it was surpassed. That would be Queen with the Queen and Steely Dan with Can't Buy a Thrill. So
Nice.
So I think that's it for me. I can come up with a million more in here, but yeah.
Cool.
All right, Martin, wrap up comments, honorable mentions.
Yeah, the Angel one, you know, I prefer Hell of a Band, but a lot of people love Angel, and it is kind of like a ambitious prog metal masterpiece sort of thing. So you can't, you know, it's unassailable as an album. You know, Asia is a famous band that goes this way, but I don't even like the first Asia album even all that much. The Tubes is an interesting one. I do love that first album, but I love all the others as well. But you could argue that that's an interesting one. I mean, that band had probably three phases throughout the years. But yeah, I had the Dio, that you can make the argument for the Dio. The only other one I actually took out was Van Halen, right? So, you know, this is a funny band where the amusing thing about this band is that everybody really puts themselves in a bad mood when they try to figure out what their favorite Van Halen album is, because you can't stop complaining about half the songs on your favorite Van Halen album. But the funny thing about the first one that I always found amusing was that it's the only one where they're really like sober and serious, and they work super hard on it. And after that, they become Who-like, just like, you know, I talked about how Cheap Trick has one Who-like album. Van Halen, all the rest of them are Who-like, but the first one is like really corporately and well put together and beautifully recorded and varied and ambitious. And they never made an album like that ever again. So a lot of people will cite the debut. I mean, it is a diamond album, so it is a well-loved album. Let me just go down my list here. Yeah, Merciful. A funny one is Sex Pistols, who only made one album, and it's an absolute classic. And then one with a short catalog is Badlands. They only have 2 official albums, but they do have a sort of unofficial, here's our demos of what would have been our third album. But people love that first Badlands album. So yeah, that's my whole list.
All right. I still champion Voodoo Highway as the best Badlands album, but it's a very different product than the very hair metal-y first one was. Yep. All right, everybody, there you go. That is a whole lot of bands that never exceeded their debut album. Drop a comment. Let us know what you agree with, what you disagree with. Remember, it's easier to read if you type everything in caps. Hit the like button. Feel free to join us on the Patreon. We've got a great little community, and we would love to have you on the panels. There's also merch flying the Contrarian shirt today. And I would like to thank you for joining us and spending a little time. And we will see you again very soon on the next Contrarians video.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. That was a great chat.
Good night, guys.